This week's Sedra is Sedra Shemini. After the long Chag of Pesach, we only have a couple of days to get ready for this Sedra. Don't get discouraged though. We have plenty of time between now and Shabbat to learn the Sedra. And now that we've changed the clocks, Shabbat afternoon is pretty long. Plenty of time to go over the Sedra. The Sedra is interesting because it starts off with the inauguration of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle. And we find that this is Aaron's time to shine. Moshe has been the leader of the Jewish people the entire time since he's come back from Midian to Egypt. Now has his brother who is going to re-lead the Jewish people as the Kohen Gadol. With the inauguration of the Mishkan, he has a house to serve Hashem in, the tabernacle. With this new approach, with this new tabernacle, for the first time Aaron's going to shine. Aaron's going to be the star of the show. And yet when the time comes on the 8th day, Yom HaShmini, for Aaron to take the lead, he's hesitant, he's reluctant to take the lead, and Moshe has to encourage him. The question is, why was Aaron reluctant to lead? Moshe points out to Aaron, he says, to convince him to take the lead, which he eventually does, that it was for this reason that you were appointed. If this is the whole reason you were appointed, Aaron, then come on, let's go. Reluctantly, Aaron takes the lead. The question is, why? Besides Moshe's point that this was the time for Aaron to shine, that this is what he was appointed for, the next question we have to ask ourselves is, as a Jewish leader, the last thing we want to see is hesitancy and reluctance. We want our leaders to be willing and able and confident in their leadership skills. It's a little question that we have on Aaron this week. But as we look through Jewish history, we see that most of our leaders, especially in the Torah, have shown reluctance. Famous scene of Moshe at the burning bush, who was reluctant and argued with Hashem that he was not the one to lead. When King Achashverosh and Haman decreed that the Jewish people should die, and Mordechai says to Esther that she has to go up in front of King Achashverosh, Esther is reluctant and says, I don't think so. Anyone that approaches the king without permission is put to death. And Mordechai has to tell her, it was for this that you were appointed. This could be the whole reason why you were made queen. Reluctantly, both Moshe and Esther take roles of leadership. If our greatest leaders all share one quality of hesitancy and reluctance to lead, we can't say that inherently it's a bad fault. And the reason why it's not a fault, the reason why this is actually good, but temporarily at the time that they showed the trait was the wrong time, but the trait itself was good, was because the trait of hesitancy in leadership shows the understanding and the significance of what they were doing. Leading the Jewish people is not simply leading like leading a basketball team. It's an approach in the service of God. Our leaders should always be humble and have the understanding enough to recognize that fact, that even with the quality of leadership that they might possess, there has to be some hesitancy. But at the point of leadership, at the time where you have to take the lead, that's not appropriate. Then hesitancy has to be put aside. One's humbleness has to be put aside. One has to take those qualities of leadership and put them to good use. Shabbat Shalom.